Are you sure that's a good idea, Simon? You know the rule, never split the party. It'll be fine, trust me. If I've learned one thing in these past few days, it's that I do not in fact suck all the time. No, he doesn't say that. Well, hello and welcome back once again to Me, Myself and I. I am, as always, your intrepid host, player, and games master, Trevor Devall. Before we get started today, I mentioned a show or two ago that we have official merchandise for sale, so if you want to buy some things like this lovely cup right here, oh, it'll show you, look at that. Ooh, Me, Myself and I, look at that. It's lovely. So if you're interested in helping out the show and supporting the show that way, by all means, check that out. When we last saw Simon and friends, they had entered the Temple of Morgus, which itself was under attack by the cultists of Devona, led by the High Priestess of Devona. And they were intent on slaughtering all the priests of Morgus there in order to prevent them from enacting a ritual, a counter-ritual, if you will, that would stop the tidal wave from hitting the town. Simon and friends managed somehow, by some miracle, to stop them and to slay all of the Devonan priestesses and cultists and save the town. Now, interestingly enough, as that happened, right before that happened, ARNE thought that the game was up. ARNE saw this tidal wave coming in, or heard it, or felt its presence, or whatever. He knew that the tidal wave was coming, and so he decided at the last second to get out of Dodge. So he turned and fled right before Simon and Edbert and the ghost actually saved the day. So I think where we start the scene here is Simon and Edbert coming out of the Temple of Morgus, coming up those stairs and into the sorely damaged town of Hundatora, damaged from all the fires and the fighting in the streets and things like this. I think the population is breathing a collective sigh of relief as they see that massive tidal wave has completely dissipated. However, they still have to deal with the fact that half the town is still on fire and that there's, dead bodies in the streets. And I think that the town guard as well is going around sort of mopping up the remaining cultists and things. But as they come out of the temple, Simon notices that Edbert is wounded. Edbert, your wound, I have to tend to it. Right now? We've got to find Arne. He scarvered off somewhere. Yes, I know, Ed, but Arne can wait, though. That wound cannot. Simon is going to do a little heal roll. But he does have it at D4. And let's see where we're at. Double ones. Critical failure. Well, I'm not going to let that stand. That's crazy. I'm going to be spending my first penny of the game to re-roll. Now, he is rolling a -1, actually, because in Savage Worlds, you take off the penalty of the patient as well. So it's -1. Here we go. -1. Look at that. There we go. That's a little better. Penny well spent, finally. 5 - 1 is 4, so that is a success. Edbert is no longer wounded, but it does take 10 minutes. The whole reason why they're in this mess in the first place is because Edbert knows that Arne knows something about the temple. What that something is, we have no idea, but they've just risked their lives in order to find out, to save Arne's life, which led them to the temple, and here we are. So I think that's the first thing that happens, is they come out of the temple, and they're looking around, is there any sign of Arne? That's where we're gonna start. So before we do, I'm going to do our chaos check, so to see if the scene is altered or interrupted. So remember, we're back down to chaos level 5, as things have sort of come back down and reset themselves. So let us roll our D10 and see if the scene is interrupted. 5, which means that the scene is going to be altered. The scene is they're looking for, or they're about to start looking for Arne. So I think the most logical thing is that they don't find him. That for some reason, he's actually nowhere to be seen. They get up and they begin to explore the town. Now, as I said, the town is still in chaos, so there's still people running around. There's these, people like water brigades basically putting out the fires and things like this. Arne is nowhere to be found. They search for a good 20 minutes around this area. There's no way Arne could have gotten this far so fast. Where could he be? I don't know. I think they're gonna have to do like a streetwise roll to see if they can talk to anybody, excuse me, have you seen this man? And giving a description of Arne, things like that. Both of these guys have penalties on their charismas. Simon because he's an outsider, and Edbert because he's bloodthirsty. Well, they're two wild cards, so I think I'm gonna give them both a roll, but they're gonna have to split up. You take the east part of the town, and I'll take the west, and they split up. So Simon for his roll. Now, he does not have streetwise. Of course. Why would he have a useful skill? Why on earth would he have a useful skill? So he's gonna roll. Oh, this is terrible. He's gonna fail because he's rolling -2 because he doesn't have the skill, and a further -2 because of his terrible charisma. No, so he's gonna spend an hour and come up with nothing. Edbert, oh my God, Edbert has the skill. Look at that, who knew? So he's gonna roll a d4. So this is still at -2 instead of -4 because of his penalty. No, so after an hour searching, they meet up back at the Sailor's Mess, the now no longer burning Sailor's Mess, and they come up empty-handed. What are we supposed to do now? The entire reason why we came back here was to gain allies. The one ally in town that you think would be actually useful to us has disappeared. No, we have to fight him. He's clearly not in town. He must have left town. He must have actually gone into the wilds. Well, Simon, you're a ranger. You can track him, right? Well, I can certainly try. It will be much more difficult at night. I think that it's like early evening, basically, at this point. I think the cult is probably struck in the early evening. So maybe it's around 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, something like that. So they're pretty exhausted. They have been on the road all day as well, so they're pretty tired. I think that they have no choice, but they clearly Arne is not in the town, at least as far as they can tell. So I think that they have no choice but to try and go into the wilds to try and track him down. So, luckily, Simon is in fact a ranger, and he does actually have tracking. Who knew? Something he's, I think, moderately good at. It was D6. It's not terrible. The gates are still wide open because the guards are way too busy trying to help fight the fires and, as I said before, like mop up the cultists and things like this. So they do slip out of town, and right away Simon goes to work with his tracking. Unfortunately at -2. Does he pick up Arne's tracks? Actually, we don't know if Arne did leave town or not. They think he did because they failed their Streetwise roll. Maybe if he succeeds in the track roll, he does actually find something, and then maybe we'll go to the fate chart. But for right now, let's ask Savage World, what happens? Does he do the track roll? Oh, Exploder 6. 4 is 10, -2, because it's night, is 8. He will succeed with a raise. So the question now, is there something to find? If there is, he will definitely find it, because Simon is a great tracker, and this is the first time he's ever actually got to use that skill, I think. So this is great. Let's ask the fate chart. Did Arne, in fact, leave town? I'm just gonna call it 50-50, because I really have no idea. 50-50, here we go. On Chaos Factor 5, 42 is a yes. So he did leave town, which means Simon picks up his tracks. So, which way are they headed? Are they headed back to the temple? Or are they headed in a totally different direction? I have no idea. I have no idea why Arne would go to the temple. I have no idea what he knows. So let's call it 50-50. 50-50. Did Arne head towards the temple, at least in that general direction? No, he did not. It's not an extreme no, so he's not heading somewhere totally opposite, but he's not going towards the temple. So right now, these guys are on a coast. It's a western coast. To the north is a series of mountains. To the east is a series of plains, I guess, and forests. I'm not really sure what's to the east. So, I think that's where Arne went. Arne's tracks lead not north, not back to the Temple of Thurzan or beyond, but rather east into unknown lands for us. So, Simon is able to follow the tracks for 1 mile in the dark. It's very hard to do, but he does. Where is Arne going? This is important now. Where is Arne going? And why did he leave town? Did he flee Simon? Was he fleeing Simon because he was afraid that Simon was going to come after him and with his new friends, his ghostly friends, because don't forget, Arne also knows about the ghost. Arne saw the ghost, and he could have been totally freaked out by that as well. Maybe this was just way too much for him. Did Arne flee town because he was afraid that Simon and his friends were going to take vengeance on him for abandoning the fight? You know what? I think that's very unlikely. I don't think that's the reason why he left. 25% chance on this for a yes answer. 66 is a no answer, and it's doubles, but it's over the chaos factor of 5, so it's not a random event. So no, he did not flee for that reason, which means he left town for a different reason. He didn't leave because he was afraid of Simon taking vengeance on him. Remember, he is still technically hunting Simon, so he has an intention of getting Simon and putting him back in chains and leading him, and leading him back to the city to the north, to Manfred of Dovedane. But he did leave for a reason. We've closed off the thread that says Arne wants to test Simon's character from last time. So he did test his character because Simon saved his life. Simon and Edward saved Arne's life. I think that he actually fled the town before he knew that the tidal wave hit. So I don't think Arne has any idea that the tidal wave didn't hit. What is the purpose of him going to the east? 78. Cruelty. 30. Possessions. Cruelty of possessions. I think that he still believes he needs to take Simon in. That he's pretty set on that. I think he's certainly questioned whether or not Simon is guilty, but Arne, you know, he's got his reputation as a bounty hunter at stake. It doesn't matter if the guy's guilty or innocent. He said he was gonna bring him in. He's gonna bring him back alive. Cruelty of possessions. I think that Arne has a secret weapon, a secret stash of something buried off in the woods to the east. And he's going there to get it. Because he knows that Simon has powerful friends, his fighter friend, Edbert. He also knows that Simon has some ghost on his side, apparently. I think he has some artifact, some item, some sort of magic item that's going to basically be able to discorporate the ghost or to deal with the ghost in some way. So, he's got it buried somewhere. That's kind of cool, actually. Is it another cabin in the woods, like in the previous episode? I doubt that, just because that's boring to do the same thing over again, isn't it? So, Chaos Vector 5, I'm gonna say it's very unlikely it's a cabin in the woods. 07, look at that, surprise. In fact, it is another cabin in the woods. I don't think that this cabin is very far outside of town. I think that Arne would have stashed his stuff there to have it easily accessible, so I think it's probably within a mile, which makes perfect sense because that's how far Simon can go with his tracking roll. So, it is night. Simon and Edbert creeping through the woods. And the ghost, creeping through the woods, and they come across this cabin area here. So, what do you make of this? I don't know. These are definitely Arne's tracks, and it goes right to that doorway. What do you suppose he's up to in there? I have no idea, Edbert, but we need to find out. Let me ask you this, Edbert. What did Arne tell you that makes you think that he knows anything at all about how we can get back in the Temple of Thurazan? That's an excellent question. What did Arne tell Edbert in the tavern, or what did Arne say that made Edbert think, oh, wait a minute, this guy knows something about undead or magical barriers or who knows what? I have no idea. Let's ask the old event chart here. What does he know? Change. 85. Technology. Change technology. Okay, so he has an item, and perhaps that item is even here amongst the stash, because remember, Arne is going back for this secret weapon to use against the ghost, right? To neutralize the ghost. So maybe that secret weapon, whatever it is also the thing that can change the technology that can basically be used to bring down the supernatural barrier that has been erected. Yeah. So I think it's the same thing. I think that whatever Arne's up to here, I think that this item can achieve both purposes. It can neutralize Sherilyn, Spirit Bane, and it can also neutralize the barrier that is up around the temple, which means it's a very powerful item that has power directly over the powers of the undead and things like this. It's all connected, you see? It's all connected. I don't know what that item is yet, but we'll find out. So, they begin to sneak their way up. Does Arne know they're coming? Does he have any reason to suspect he's being followed? I think it's likely he would suspect that they would come after him, considering what happened last time. So I'm gonna call it likely. And does he suspect? Yes, he does suspect that people are coming after him. So I think that he's kept some sort of watch or something like that. Maybe even he set a trap, who knows? But let's, yeah, actually, has he set a trap? No, because if I'd rolled an extreme yes, then I'd say yes, he set a trap, but I didn't, I just rolled a yes. So he hasn't set any traps, but he is wary. He's aware that someone might be coming after him. So I think this comes down to stealth rolls. My question is, does Edbert have stealth? He does, he's not great at it, he's got it as a D6. Simon's much better. Simon says to Edbert, I think you should stay here for now, Edbert. Let me go up and scout the area, see if I can look in the windows. It's very dark. It should be easy for me to be quiet as a mouse. I'll go up and see what I can see. Are you sure that's a good idea, Simon? You know the rule. Never split the party. It'll be fine. Trust me. If I've learned one thing in these past few days, it's that I do not in fact suck all the time. No, he doesn't say that. So you can see here that there's like a bluff. This cabin is situated on a like a tiny little cliff face kind of thing. There's a light on in the cabin. Simon does his stealth roll. Simon's pretty good at this. He's got a D8. He is going to try and sneak his way up. So, in Savage Worlds, if you're sneaking up and your opponent is wary, he's actively opposing you, which he is. We've already established that. Arne is expecting someone. Then it's going to be, I believe it's oppose rolls for stealth. Here we go. This is Simon's stealth. He's rolling 5. It's a success. It's okay. ARNE is going to make his opposed notice roll. Now, ARNE is equal to Simon in pretty much every way, so he has a notice of D4. So this actually helps us in this case, and he's also a wild card. So that was Simon's. He rolled a 5. This is an opposed roll. This is ARNE's notice. Does he notice Simon sneaking up to him? 5 is a tie. Nothing happens. Means a struggle of will, so to speak. He's kind of scrabbles a bit on the rock face, and a few pebbles go coming down, and the light suddenly flickers, and Simon drops to the ground with his back against the shale of the rock, trying to make himself as flat as possible as this light flickers. Edbert has Simon's longbow, so he's drawn it, and he's, keeping through the trees. He's sort of keeping a bead on the window because he can see that light flickering around too. Simon is going to try, and he's going to try it again. He waits for a few minutes. The lights in the cabin sort of settle. Maybe a lantern or whatever that ARNE had. Actually, that's a question. This item that ARNE has stashed away, he's got it hidden in the cabin, but has he buried it under the floorboards? I kind of like that idea. I'm going to call it very likely. Has he buried it in the floor? 66. So 66 is doubles, but it's not our chaos factor, so it's no random event. But the answer is yes. So I think Simon can hear the sound of digging and planks, floorboards being ripped up and cast aside. And he hears the sound of as he's digging in the inside. Because he's close enough, he can hear this now, the cabin up at the top of that bluff. So Simon prepares to sneak up once again. Here we go, opposed rolls once again. Oh, there we go. He's rolling 10. That's pretty good. ARNE's notice is 3. So Simon succeeds with a raise, and ARNE fails. So Simon completely wins this contest. Simon creeps up, quiet. And he goes to a window and he kind of pokes in. And the window is, smoky, sooty from years of fires being burned in the hearth on the inside. But he can sort of peer through it, and you can see a lantern on a table. Very, very simple cabin, much like the one that him and Mord stayed in. All those days ago now, weeks ago. But he can see there, he sees a figure by the flickering lamplight. And it's ARNE, it's the back of ARNE, but he can see ARNE. And ARNE is, and he's digging. And I think at this moment, Tonk hits something, and he puts the shovel aside, and he digs inside the hole, and he pulls out an item. And this is the thing that he came here to get. The thing whose purpose is to put an end, or at least discombobulate the ghost, because the ghost is an obstacle in ARNE's way to bring in Simon, right? What is this thing? Ooh, let's go to our fantasy companion right here. Boop. And let's look at our treasure tables. We're gonna roll a d20 on the magic item table, because it is definitely a magic item. 18, a scroll. It is a miracle scroll, so it's a scroll, that makes sense. It's a scroll scribed by a priest. And the purpose of the scroll is to banish anything to do with the undead. Obviously, it's a very powerful scroll because that's what Edbert heard ARNE talking about. Just in passing, he had mentioned something about undead, and he happened to be in possession of this special scroll scribed by this high priest of this temple somewhere back in the city. And so that stuck in Edbert's mind, like, wait a minute, that scroll might actually be able to help to bring down the barrier, which is the whole reason why he came. So it is this scroll. But I think the scroll, in terms of the power it's basically a very powerful dispel, but focused solely on undead things. So solely on the powers of necromancy, okay? And it's a powerful scroll, so I think it's going to be a D12. He believes that this scroll is going to be able to banish the ghost. I don't think that this scroll is powerful enough to actually permanently banish the ghost, but it could certainly discorporate the ghost for a long time, which is, interestingly enough, something that Edbert might be interested in doing, because Edbert is trying to get rid of this ghost. So that's an interesting twist right there that might come up. Nonetheless, this scroll is the very reason why Edbert wanted to find ARNE, to get this thing, or at least to get him to use it on the barrier. Oh, of course that's why. Of course that's why Edbert would be interested in this. When he heard ARNE talking about the scroll that could actually banish undead, he was like, what? Oh, really? What do you mean by that? Did you mean like someone who's, say, haunted by a ghost, Of course he'd be interested in that. And I don't think in the tavern he got a chance to ask him about something before they were forced to part company for whatever reason. That's why he was fresh in his mind. Interesting. Arn pulls up the scroll. Simon, of course, has no idea what this is, but he did ask Edbert before, on the way there, what was it that got your attention? And I think he would have told him. Well, actually, he mentioned something about having some kind of scroll that could dispel the powers of the undead or something like that. So Simon sees the scroll and there it is. This is clearly the thing. Is Simon going to try and talk to Arn? Any kind of communication that Simon has with Arn is going to suffer the outsider penalty. So that makes it really difficult. He might just want to, he's going to attack him. I think he loads that crossbow and he takes a bead on Arn, and I think he looks over to Edbert and he motions him up. So Edbert now is going to try and stealthily approach. He's got a D6. The cabin as well. 4. So that's a success, but as he gets close, once again up here, I think that Arn, who is inside here, gets his D4 notice check. Edbert succeeded with the 4, so Arn has got to beat the 4, and he will. 7. So at that moment, Arn stands up, turns. Now remember, Simon has got his crossbow at his back. Arn turns, but he can't see Edbert coming up, but he could definitely hear something, because Edbert comes up, and once he kind of scrabbles on the stones as well. Simon sees this, and through the window, I think he sees Arn turn. I think Simon basically smashes open the window with the butt of the crossbow, and he's got Arn dead to rights. Don't even think about it, Arn. Just put the scroll down. And Arn turns. He spins around to see Simon there. What are you doing here, Simon? I thought for sure you would have been far out to sea now, taken by the flood. There was no flood, Arn. Edbert and I prevented it. A fact that you would know if you hadn't turned tail and fled. Why did you leave us at the very height of the battle? My reasons are my own. Nonetheless, if you have saved the town of Undatora, congratulations are in order, I suppose. Again, that would be another thing that he would clock. Okay, Simon has saved the town of Undatora. I know you are not alone out here. I hear your friend. He's slowly making his way across the table where his bow is, and Simon, keep your hands where I can see them. Arn kind of holds his hands up like this, the scroll in one hand. He knows you're here, Edbert. You might as well come up. Don't worry, I've got him covered. Edbert comes up, scrabbles up the slope, opens the door. The ghost behind him, I don't think the ghost is manifesting right now. Edbert sees the scroll in Arn's hand. Is that the scroll you were talking about a few nights back? What? Yes, this is the scroll. He's kind of looking around Edbert, almost like he's waiting for this ghost to manifest, like it did, earlier. Edbert, that is the scroll that we can use to get inside the temple. Yes, Simon, it is, but, well, what are you planning on doing with that scroll? Arn. Here's the thing. Edbert really wants to exercise his ghost. It's a thread that we have here. Does he think that this scroll could banish this ghost from his person? Now, he knows that he's here to help Simon, right? But his real objective was to banish the ghost. We have an interesting thing here, because Edbert wants the ghost gone. Arn wants to use the spell on said ghost in order to neutralize the ghost to take in Simon. Simon needs that scroll to break the barrier on the temple, so that he can go in and find what happened to his father. Your spectral friend. Is it here? Is it here, he says. It's always here, Arn. It's always here. Surrounding me, plaguing my every thought, preventing me from being able to sleep. Now, answer me a question. That scroll, will it be able to banish this ghost from me? Two things happen here. One, Simon looks at Edbert. What are you doing, Edbert? I need that scroll to get in the temple. Edbert just sort of ignores Simon. Answer the question, Arn. If you use that scroll on me, will it banish the ghost? And Arne kind of looks at him, kind of glances over at Simon in the window with a loaded crossbow pointed at him. It will do just that, Edward. I could free you of that ghost right now. Don't you dare do it! I will put this crossbow bolt right through your heart. I need the power of that scroll to bring down the barrier at the Temple of Thurzan. Do not use it here. Simon, that scroll. If Arne here could get rid of the ghost, there's no reason for us to go back to the temple. There's no reason for you to go back to the temple, but I still have every reason. Simon, let Arne do this. Let Arne get rid of this ghost for me. I will still go back to the temple with you. And if he does, I will have no way into that temple. I know a thing or two about scrolls, and once he uses the power of that scroll, it will crumble into dust, rendering it useless. We've a bit of a Tarantino-esque Mexican standoff here, if you will. But there is sort of a wild card in here, and that is the ghost. The ghost does not want to be banished. The ghost wants to keep Edward alive. But the ghost does not want Arne to use that scroll on Edward to banish her. She would much rather that scroll get used to bring down the barrier so they can go in and cleanse that temple. Because don't forget, she was the head of the Order of the Purifying Flame. Her intrinsic goals are to banish undead, even though she is an undead herself. We gotta ask the chart here. Does the ghost act against Arne, preventing him? Because I think Arne sort of looks at Simon, looks back over at Edbert. Don't you do it, Arne! You can see Edbert's like salivating. He's so desperate. He hasn't slept in weeks. He's so desperate for any chance to have this ghost banished. Does he actually ask Arne to use the scroll right now to banish this ghost? He likes Simon. He's fought with Simon. I think it's unlikely he does that. Does he give Arne the go-ahead to use the scroll right now? 96. Ooh, extreme? No. So Arne is looking at Edbert. Edbert kind of, and I think the reason why it's extreme no is because the ghost starts to swirl around Edbert, screaming ethereally, screaming in his, not in his ear, in his soul. He sinks to the ground, clutching his ears. No! The ghost is communicating to him that this scroll has to be used to bring down the temple barrier so that she can get in there and finish the job and cleanse this whole place. So he sinks to his knees. Arne sees this. He's desperately looking around. Simon with the loaded crossbow looks. Edbert, are you all right? Is it the ghost? At that, Arne, the ghost. And I think that he begins to read that scroll because Arne's purpose is to banish that ghost. So Simon has to do something now. Simon has no choice. As Edbert begins to unroll the scroll, Simon takes the shot. So does he hit him? He will hit him. The crossbow negates 1 point of armor, so really it's against toughness 5. He's rolling 2d6 versus toughness 5. He rolls 5 plus 1 is 6 versus toughness. He shakes Arne. So basically he shoots Arne, the bolt sinks into Arne's forearm, which causes him to drop the scroll. He's shouting in pain. Meanwhile, the ghost is still swirling around Edbert. Simon desperately goes to reload. We have to go to initiative. All right, here we go. This is Simon first. Simon acts on 7. Edbert acts on 6. And Arne acts on Queen. Arne is shaken. He's got to do his spirit roll to break the shaken status. He does, but it takes his whole round. So he basically snaps off the bolt and pulls it out. And that's all he can do. Meanwhile, we go down to Simon. Simon loads the crossbow and fires again quickly with a -2 action penalty because he's trying to put Arne down so that Arne can't read this damn scroll. So he goes, no, you don't, and he fires it again. 5 is going to be so he does hit. He's going to go 2d6 plus 1 versus toughness of 5. Okay, 7 plus 1 is 8. Exploder. 8 and 5 is 13 versus toughness of 5. Oh, 2 wounds. So that crossbow bolt takes Arne right in the collarbone. And he cries out in pain. He's gonna spend one of his special NPC tokens to do a soak roll. And he rolls a success, so he's gonna soak one of the wounds, so he is wounded once, basically. and everything he does is at -1. And then it goes to Edbert. Edbert is, and I think he cries out, all right, we'll use the damn scroll to break down the barrier, just stop. And he's in utter torture, utter mental agony from the ghost who's like shrieking into his very soul. And as soon as Edbert does this, I think his whole round is taken up with dealing with this ghost, but the ghost basically like backs off a bit. Now we go to a new round. Simon is quick, so he ignores 5 or less. He's quick, 7. Edbert is on the Joker, and Arne is on 6. So Edbert goes first. Edbert has now been persuaded by his ghost, completely cowed, bullied, and intimidated by his ghost. You are not using this scroll to get rid of me. So Edbert leaps to the scroll and goes to snatch it up. I'm going to give him a dexterity check to see if he can snatch the scroll. The dexterity. What are we playing, D&D? His agility is D6. If he gets a success, I'm gonna say he grabs it. If he gets a success with a raise, we're gonna say that it's part of his movement and he can act. So it's a success. So he leaps in and grabs the scroll and basically just kind of steps back to the door and says, "That's enough, Arne! That's enough! Now just stand down! Stand down or I'll destroy this thing right now!" The ghost goes, "Ah!" He's like, No, I didn't mean that. I didn't mean that. That is enough, Arne. Don't make me kill you. You are not my enemy, contrary to everything you have done here today. I'm taking that scroll and I'm using it to bring down the barrier. I'm gonna make this an intimidate check, but I'm gonna give Simon a +4. Simon does not have the intimidate skill, but I'm giving him a +4 because considering that Arne is once again outnumbered, wounded, and there's this ghost who's back in the room. I'm gonna give Simon a +4 on this. It's actually a +2 because he doesn't have the skill, so 7, that's a success. Arne, blood pouring down from his wound. He's got this crossbow bolt sticking out of his neck. He looks to Simon. Very well. Take the damned scroll. Just leave me be. Oh, no, I don't think so, Arne. Too long have you dogged my steps through these lands. I am not going to just let you go so that you could come after me again at your own leisure. No, my friend. You are coming with us, and you are going to help us. You are going to help us get in that temple, and you are going to help me find out what happened to my father. And Arne, already being intimidated, kind of looks at him. Very well, Simon. Just get this damned crossbow out of my neck. And that is where we will end the scene. Woo! They tracked Arne to cabin. He has Dispel Scroll versus Undead. He's been coerced, not persuaded, coerced, into going with them to the temple. Just to sort of take care of this quickly, I'm going to have Simon do a heal test. He will explode with the 4, and he will do very well with this. So basically, he is able to heal Arne of that wound. So when they start the next scene, I think the chaos factor is going to go up to 6. Yeah, so I think that what happens is Edbert is going to insist that they tie Arne up, because he does not trust him, neither does Simon. I think they're going to tie Arne up in the night and then basically lead him to the temple the next day, which is not that far. It's a full day's walk, but they can get there by the end of the night. So we're going to start the next scene by having rested now. They make for the temple with Arne and the scroll. And that is where we're going to pick up the next scene next time on Me, Myself, and I. Once again, if you enjoyed the show today or you enjoy the show at all and want to help support the show, by all means, hit like and subscribe. And if you want to check out the merchandise link in the comment section, that would be great too. Thanks so much for watching, and we will see you next time on Me, Myself, and I.